Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, recovering from his cold. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with me. We're doing a later episode this week. My guest for the evening, returning guest, part of the Flyers Nitty Gritty team and friend of the show, Joe Borek. Joe, welcome back, buddy.
Thanks, Yariv. Yeah, it's always fun to be talking about hockey, even when our Flyers. I'm going to bring up a tweet about how Jason put out when we get into the show, but when they're struggling a bit. But I think Martinez, I don't know if you saw it, but he kind of put everything into perspective in a thread.
He's good at that.
Yeah, he had yesterday, which I'll pull up because it's still one of the top things on his thing. He said there's a stat in NHL circles about being in playoff position at American Thanksgiving. And then he goes on to say there's actually a Canadian Thanksgiving, which that's not important in this point. But from 13 to 14 season to 17-18, 62 of 80 teams in a playoff spot at Thanksgiving made the playoffs. But then he looked at the strength of schedule. I don't know if you knew this, but the NHL strength of schedule played to this point. The Flyers have played the toughest schedule.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, in the entire NHL.
Which is obvious. I don't even know statistics.
Which is kind of obvious when you look at it. But the other thing he brought up,
numbers say that as well.
Back in 1920 season at Thanksgiving, AV's first season in 18 games, we had a record of 8-6-4, which was for 20 points. Also, 11th in the conference, which they had 10 separate 4-game losing streaks, and with both only included 7 goals scored in those 4-game periods. So the same stuff going on now. Almost said a word that they
it's almost like it's his system.
They eventually had another 4-game skid from the 31st of December to the January 7th date, but then we did not lose back-to-back games until when we lost to the Islanders in back-to-back games in that playoff series. So like the Flyers got it going that season, where he said his whole point is basically things can change really fast in the NHL. Obviously you don't know if it's going to change, but he thinks the reason people aren't reacting like they did that year is because of last year. Last year was such a bad season compared to AV's first season that once things start going bad, everybody's like, oh my God. Where 2 years ago it was going solid to start, and then you had a little stretch and you're like, well, this is his first season. So
yeah.
And then all of a sudden it kind of got going with this year because of last year, which that's why I think it put it in perspective, right? That's why the Flyers are kind of fans, everyone's like freaking out because of how last year was. Where in hindsight, the other thing he points out is that season we didn't have the key injuries we have now.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
20 points at this point. Yeah,
the Ryan Ellis and Kevin Hayes losses, I think it gets people to panic in one way and be like, "Oh, we're not getting them back this year," which is not true. So we're screwed, and this is the team that we have. And then the other side is like, oh, well, we would be doing better with them, which realistically is true. And we probably would have won a few of these games that we lost, or at least scored more goals that we've been scoring. But I do, let's just dig into it right now. I do think that a lot of this is a consequence of coaching. I look at things that happen on a consistent basis over the past 3 years, and I include the first year in this, even though I think he did a great job coaching in his first season as a coach here. But like you said, there are these lapses where for whatever reason, our coach, and whether it's the head coach, whether it's the assistant coach, whatever the coach is, whether it's a combination of all of them, they just lose the room. They just completely lose the room. And I don't think it means like that the players hate them. I don't think these guys are idiots. I'll never say that. I don't think Dave Haxtell was an idiot. I think obviously people in retrospect recognize that Dave Haxtell really wasn't that bad of a coach. Wasn't a great coach, but he wasn't like incompetent.
Let's put it this way. If you have Torts going out of his way to say on national TV coverage, they have Hack in Seattle, they have Ron, who I think is a very good hockey mind. Obviously, Torts has legs when he compliments somebody in the league. So for him to go out of his way and say that, that would go to show that Dave Haxtell's kind of the hockey Gabe Kapler. Now the Seattle's not going to make the players like the Giants did, but like everybody hated him while here, and then he'll probably go have success somewhere else.
I mean, people have to recognize,
even though he had success here since we made the damn playoffs, it's not like he didn't have success.
But that's a great point. That's exactly what I was going to say. He was an average coach. He was a young coach in the league. He was an average coach, and what I think was his demise is that he coached scared by the end. scared to lose.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, he was scared to lose at the end, and I totally felt that. But if you look at the season Shane Gostisbehere had under him,
ridiculous. Same with Ghost, or not Ghost. Not Ghost. G. Same with G.
Yeah, exactly.
G had the 102
and Coots, and that's kind of what I'm looking at this team. Like productivity of the players has gone down. That is AV system. I've seen that under other teams. Having said that, I've seen it where that hasn't happened. Like Sedin's had monster seasons under him, right? And I just look at the way that he loses the bench. He consistently gets out coached. And for a guy who's a very good coach, it's not supposed to happen so often where you're creating opportunity or you're coming up with a game plan and it's literally it's generating zero offense. And like we scored the other night, it was one of the most boring offensive journeys that I had to watch the Flyers go on. And it's been several games, and there's a lot of these where you just feel like the players themselves don't even know what their options are. And I look at that stuff and it frustrates me. Go ahead, please chime in.
No, I feel like the Flyers, the reason they've been a lot of frustration this year is you see like these games like against the Panthers, if you could have just got a little bit more push, especially with how Jones was playing again, you would have won that. Now, granted, that last goal was a penalty by Aaron Ekblad. He hit Fairby's stick into next century. But like you didn't do well in the overtime. You got outshot 7-0. So you still didn't show up in the overtime. It's just that you happened to lose on
3-on-3 when you have enough talent to
exactly, and speed, because you got guys like Atkinson, Fairby, G's flying out there this year, 2 years removed from being banged up a little bit. So that makes a difference. And obviously, the big thing with the Flyers, though, that's the most frustrating is, like people said, it's great how good Claude Giroux's doing, but in terms of offense, I don't think people expected the 33-year-old Giroux to be the only carrying caveat in pretty much the entirety of the season, where everybody else has had their hot stretches. But so far in the entirety of the season, I don't think coming into the season, everyone's like, oh yeah, we're going to have to ride our coattails entirely on our 33-year-old cap. I feel like
if anything, I think, and just to add on to what you're saying, I think the thought was, yeah, Giroux could have a monster season, but it'll be accompanied by these other guys. And
like Couturier
Couturier, TK, Farabee, assumably Kevin Hayes, right? Like, and defensemen putting up points. Like, our defense are not putting up points. Like, you can pick on Provorov, but none of them are.
But at the same time, Keith Yandel, I don't expect to put up points when you're 5-on-5. Like I said before the podcast, our goal
power play he should.
Yeah, scored up. Oh yeah, but that's true. But at the same time, our power play is run like a dysfunctional
finish
family.
Your point, and let's get into the power play.
But the goals above expected for us is minus 10.8. Where if you're not playing well in 5-on-5, plus your power play struggles and you don't have a good structure, Yandel gets his points mostly. Like when you look at Florida, passing it up to Huberdeau passes it to Barkov scores. Like it's usually making that good outlet pass where obviously guys like Provy that can make that outlet pass, guys like Yandel, they're not going to get the points because nobody's doing anything.
Right.
They're just dumping, chasing half of the time, which is the big issue with the Flyers, which compared to the first season, maybe bringing up Bunneman is going to be something that they want to just change the structure, because obviously Bunneman doesn't do overall the sexiest stuff, but he does play along the boards and he does play a more like board-heavy forechecking game, where the Flyers have sucked at that this year and have just dumped and chased and tried to catch up to the puck. Like where in the first season with AV, we were really good along the boards play. This year we're pitiful along the boards play.
Let me just add something to what you're saying. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that if you look at the way the team is playing, there are very rarely options for players to pass to. Like they really are just either wheeling it around the boards.
Exactly.
Or maybe the point is open. There's nothing in the slot ever.
But before, when we wheeled it around the boards, you would have guys like more guys doing exactly what McEwen's doing. Where like you would
what
be
JVR
going in,
should be doing.
What in some games like JJ said, JVR does it, but it's not consistent. But like guys like that, like what those guys should be doing, and what Patty Brown was doing. He's not even a big skater before he got injured. Mm-hmm. He was one of the other guys in the few games he played. I noticed that would actually be fine with going into the areas where you could lead to, of course, getting injured. So that's what the problem with the Flyers is too. Honestly, I don't think Scott Hartnell's wrong from what some people got mad about him,
and
saying
if you guys didn't hear
soft.
that, I'm sorry to cut you off, but if you guys didn't hear that, you should go check out what Scott Hartnell said on the NHL Network about the Flyers being soft. And they did play it on Flyers Daily as well, Jason Martinez podcast.
Yeah, and I really don't think he's wrong, because in past years, the way of Flyers hockey was just play brute, just play, like, do what McEwen's doing if you're not getting the goal scoring, because eventually you're going to beat down the other team to be able to pot a couple, which is why people always respected and didn't freak out in years past. With this year, you don't have that with the struggle in goal scoring. It's too compounded thing.
I think he is correct. I do think he is correct, but I don't think he's 100% correct, because you can pick out games this year where they have done that. That's the only problem I have with it. Is I agree with him. When we're at our worst, we're not doing that. But
he should have specified that.
Yeah, but there are games where we have done that and we won and we played our best games that way. So that's the only clarification. But I do agree it's been an issue. And
that goes to this that you were talking about. We have we've been having all these ties, just like
not the reason the power play sucks, so.
Yeah, it's like a crappy stock where you're just like whoop, like that just keeps going up and down. That's how the Flyers offense has been. But no, the power play, we can get into that now if you want to. That's structure. I feel like power plays, when they struggle big time, because if you look at some of the best power plays in the league, my one buddy, Zach, who wrote for us for a bit before he got a job, and I were talking about it, the Ducks, who are a very good young team, but not like the most overly, like abundantly, like proven talent team yet, have one of the best power plays in hockey. The Sabres, for God's sakes, who definitely are not one of the most talented teams in hockey, have one of the best power plays in the damn game. So, like, power play, yes, having players like Ovechkin and Backstrom, you can run the same damn system like they've been doing for years, and it's going to work because you have Ovechkin and Backstrom. But you have teams that just run like Don Granato's coaching staff, a very good system, and that's how they get it done. The Flyers don't. The Flyers run a very simplistic around-the-board system, and then they get shots from the point. It makes no sense that you have guys like Van Riemsdyk, and also games that McEwen's playing well, like the Sabres do with Gregerssons and the Ducks do with that guy Deloriers. They should put him on the power play to park himself in front of the net and try to get the deflection goals that we've seen him make before, because it makes no sense that you have a net front presence in the power play and don't shoot it from the point when there's an open shot. You literally pass up open shots and have to get like 14, like the Flyers equivalent on power plays. Oh, is this not a 14-carat gold equivalent shot? Well, I ain't shooting the damn thing. Well, like that's not what you want. In the power play, you get dirty goals. That's what you see the Sabres been doing this year, and the Bruins have done the entirety of basically their organization's existence. That pisses us off every single time we play them, where they get a goal going off of someone's leg or something because they crash the net with the best of them.
Yeah, no, they're definitely not shooting enough. The creativity has completely disappeared. It seems like a lot of times they're standing around, and it's, like I like what you said about when you have a guy like Backstrom and Ovechkin, you can be predictable, and when you don't have those tools. Problem is, we do have those tools. I disagree with everybody who says that the Flyers' problem with their power play is predictability. I don't think that's the problem. I don't think that's ever been the problem. Under Joey Mullen, we were incredibly predictable, and we scored a shit ton of goals on the power play. It has nothing to do with predictability. It has to do with execution and speed and swiftness of that. If you look at the way the Flyers power play operates, they are standing around. They are looking at each other. Claude Giroux is like, am I allowed to be on the left side because they told me to be on the right side when I really should be on the left side running the entire power play? Like, I don't think that this is rocket science.
Yeah, it's the structure. Exactly. The structure sucks. Yeah.
And again, I'm not going to pick on Terrian and call him an idiot. I don't believe in that stuff. I don't believe any of these coaches are idiots. I don't believe any of them are incompetent losers. None of that stuff that people say on Twitter. Nothing like that. But at the end of the day, I do not think he is a competent power play coach, without a doubt. I wouldn't have hired him to be a head coach here, and I definitely wouldn't have hired him to be a power play coach. I don't know what experience he has even running a power play to efficiency, but since he has been here, the power play has gradually gotten worse every single season. He was living off the remnants of the talent that he has. And I would even argue that when this team scores offensively, it has more to do with the talent available than it has to do with the system provided. And that is my question with the coaching staff. It seems like defensively, they're actually all right. I think that our defensive system is fine. I don't really have a problem with the poke checks. I don't have a problem with it. Like, we're doing a lot of one and done opportunities. Like, yeah, teams are getting chances.
And keeping teams to the outside.
Right. They're doing a good job with that. But when we get into the offensive zone, there's nothing there. And if you look at who's in charge of that, It's not just Terrian, but it's Terrian and it's AV. Mike Yo has a history of creating very good defensive systems. AV has a history of getting the team to work as a team, never really being the best offensive team. And Michel Terrian has a history of none of that. So why is he running the offense?
No, yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
He has a history of underachieving with the talent that he's had, I would argue, and making excuses in the process publicly. So that's the coach that I've always seen. And I'm not saying he's done that. I think he's actually personality. He's been all right since he's been here. So I hate calling him out to get fired. But at a certain point, it's like, then don't fire him. Bring in a power play coach.
Yeah. Bring in a guy that's just a standard.
You're admitting that he's not doing his role. Sorry.
No, but if you don't want to fire him, that is a good secondary way to do it there. But I do like with the way Frost played his first game, it looks like they're going to put him on the second power play projected when looking at I looked at RotoWire earlier, and they always project the team's power plays and goaltenders and yada, 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 yada. And I like that second unit now because if you can do Cam, now they're not doing it enough. They keep putting him in the wrong spot, like they keep putting Giroux in the wrong spot.
Right.
But if you can put Cam on his one-timer side.
You mean on the right side?
Yeah, on the right side.
Point?
Yeah.
Or
put Fairby. I would say more like at Ovechkin's spot just so he can wire his shot. Because if you get Cam Atkinson a one-timer, it's just like G. They both have great shots. Yeah. He's going to be able to fire it. And Fairby passing from the opposite side is a great passer. And then if you can get a pass from the point as well, obviously from Yandel or whoever's out there at that time, Sanheim, whoever the heck he put out there, then that would be helpful as well. But the first unit is the only one that's been getting a couple chances of late when you just see like, oh, there's been a couple chances like JJ and Jonesy or JJ and Boosh talked about. And then the second unit comes out and hasn't got it. I feel like that second unit, having a guy that adds more speed and also passing in Frost combined with Fairby and Atkinson, if they set them up right, maybe could get the second unit going more. Because obviously with the amount of chances, if you get 4 chances compared to 2, like we've got on a couple with the first unit, that gives you a 50% higher chance of scoring. So that would be very helpful at that point. So I feel like the Flyers just need to not oversimplify power play, but just do what they should have been doing that people like us can see, where for some reason Michel Terrian cannot see with his eyes that these guys are best to just fire the puck from their one-timer side and Atkinson and Giroux. And it's like, no, we're going to put them on the opposite side. It's like, but that's just stupid. Like, or like they slide back to the point and you're like, no. Like you rotate here, move him back up. Like the Flyers also, that's how they get sloppy sometimes because they keep rotating on the power play. Then guys will get in their wrong spots. And you're just like, what the hell are you doing? I completely
agree. Yeah. I love what you said there because that's an example of what I'm talking about. And I understand, again, I'm not putting people down because people I respect keep saying the Flyers are being predictable in the power play. And that's, even though that's not what Martinez said recently, it's what's been said in the past, and I'm like, that's not the problem. Like, okay, you're rotating. It's like, no, it's got to, you literally you have an extra man. It doesn't matter if you're predictable. It matters that you move that puck quicker than they can keep up with the play. And you get that shot on net, whether it's the cleanest shot or not is irrelevant. If it hits the boards around the goalie, it still creates an opportunity. Right now, our team is just skating circles around the outside until eventually they get collapsed on and the puck exits the zone. And it happens, I would say, 80 to 90% of the time on the power play. And
exactly.
What is the point of that when if you just give the puck to G on the half boards, give him a good defenseman to pass to, he'll literally keep the puck in play for you for at least 50% of that power play.
No,
exactly. Is that worse than what we're doing?
And the other thing is JVR is, if you watched him in Toronto when he was up there a little bit, he didn't just set up in front of the net. He also kind of went to Shen's corner where when Braden Shen was here, you would see him drop back a bit and then fire a one-timer from the high slot where we don't do that well, first of all, we don't do that with anybody for some reason on our power play. And you have a multitude of guys. Yeah, you have multitude of guys, including a guy that just got caught up in Frost who's done that in his entire minor league career as well. That can do that. Fairby can definitely fire one-timers from the mid slot if he rotates into there. So you got multitudes of players that can do that. I feel like it's kind of what I've been saying with the Phantoms a bit too with Ian LePerriere, because I think he's good with the young players and good at development. Not the best structurally as a coach.
And
I feel like the way the team is playing on the ice this season has a lot more to do with coaching structure than it has to do with the players that are out there on the ice.
100%. I think there's plenty of talent on the Phantoms for them to be competitive. And
but also with the Flyers too.
Yeah. 100%. That's the thing. If people think that I'm like, I don't actually agree with people. We need to like go out and make a trade. I was like, there's plenty of fucking talent here. Sorry, guys. That's why I'm like, my patience with the coaching staff is what's going away. Because I'm like, I've seen okay, let's just take the game against Arizona when we played against Arizona. Okay. They were never going to win that game, regardless of what they tell you on television. Arizona was never going to win that game. They never had control to win the game. But if you look at the way they at least generated offense, they had some good breaks. They had some good 2-on-1s. Where are the Flyers generating offense?
Yeah.
You're telling me the Flyers have less talent?
Yeah. Now, granted, last game, I do think, which I hope he continues to do, Frost did a pretty good job. He actually had 3 hits.
Haven't gotten to it yet, Joe.
Yeah, 1 shot. And then, and also he should have been on sides. For a breakaway.
And you know what? That would have been a game-changing moment as well.
Exactly.
So that's scored on that power play, which he's capable of doing. And again, this is where I kind of started my rant the other day. I'm going to start this off. I like Max Willman. I believe he is an NHL player. I believe he is a fourth-liner NHL player. He's in the beginning of that NHL career. He will make his way back up. And I think he's a guy who probably will find his place at the age of probably like 27, 28 as like a permanent mainstay in the NHL. Having said that, your team is struggling to score. Your decision is to put Max Willman as a third-line left-wing scorer when you have Oscar Lindblom. And again, I get it. Lindblom doesn't look great offensively. I don't really think he's looked that bad. He outplayed Willman in that game. And if you look at who Lindblom has played with, who have been his centers this year, and you wonder why he hasn't scored. Scott Lawton, who is a phenomenal grinding center, okay, or a left winger.
He's a defender,
He's a defender. He's not a playmaker. And Nate Thompson,
who's really a defender,
and I like this. I like Nate Thompson. I would pro bringing him in here, though I'd argue at this point maybe when they're all healthy he should be a 13th
Brown
forward.
Might be
he should be a 13th forward. He just doesn't have the same gusto on skates, and he doesn't bring a big offensive impact, which is fine. But again, you're trying to get a guy, Oscar Lindblom, going. Not bury him on your first line. That's I don't understand this. Is like, why didn't you ever try Lindblom with
the other thing is I love Max from following him from Reading to like he was a guy that 2 years ago was discounted as ever making it in general into pro hockey, and then makes it to Reading. Makes it to Reading as one of the better players in that given season, becomes one of the better players in the AHL, not just last year, but this year when everyone's back from the taxi squads and you actually have all the good players in the league that are veterans and not them just stuck in limbo. So this year he even proved that. You did see, though, in the NHL, like Lance wrote in his article, you saw a little bit of he had to catch up to the speed and pace. As
most young players
which most young guys, exactly. But that's why I wouldn't have moved him to the third. Like, that doesn't make sense when the guy's having the passes go off his stick a little bit. And he's playing with effort. You always see the 110 drive, but he's not there yet in terms of being with the NHL game. And you're going to move him up a line.
A time when your team is not scoring. And this is before Zach McEwen is going to be playing on the third line, which I am more in favor of than Willman because he earned it. He's been effective, right? But at first, he moved up Willman, and how did they not recognize that McEwen needed to be moved up the lineup? This is the stuff that is very much frustrating me. Like he earned it. He earned it. I
think AV was trying to do that when you put a young guy that's trying to prove himself up the lineup. It kind of tries to bring the energy of the rest of the line with. But when you see that guy is not 100% up with the speed of the NHL game yet, that doesn't make much sense. Where like other teams that do that
And he's not
Or
Frost. He's not like a guy who's going to beat you with his skill. He's going to beat you because he's a hard worker.
That has speed. Yeah,
he's got speed. Skater, He's obviously has a great mind for the game. He wouldn't have evolved the rate that he's doing without it. But he's not a guy who's going to come in and ever put up 20 goals in the NHL, in my opinion.
No, Willman's more of a guy in the NHL level that he's going to be that hardworking, like lefty Tyler Pitlick-esque player. That's just going to do the things you want within the game, and then he might have a couple of those, since he obviously has goal scoring ability in the pros at the lower levels, those like game winning clutch goals that you saw Tyler.
Well, let me ask you this: why hasn't Joel Farabee played the right side at all this year?
That's another thing that doesn't make
why put JVR, who's never played the right side, has no success there, didn't have success there, and then a guy Farabee who threw up 20 goals on a 30-goal pace last year playing the right side. That one you're scared to put on the right side, where you could easily balance out this, like the Farabee, Frost, Atkinson line. I still don't understand why Atkinson and Farabee are on the same line. Like, I also don't understand why Konechny and Giroux are on the same line. Like, don't you want to mix up the type of players that you're putting? Like, I just
you could switch that too, because if you have with
Coots and G, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things. I feel like Atkinson and TK, excuse me, being like the quick skaters that have very good shots. Both kind of, if you put them on different lines, you're just exchanging at that point the pesky, I want to piss you off side of TK's game with Atkinson's at that point, because they're both, in terms of offense, quick skaters that have a very good shot if they actually are aggressive enough to use it. Yeah. Where TK is one of the guys this season, since the beginning of the season. Cam is kind of one of those guys that you brought up with Oscar that kind of has looked good within the game but hasn't got points, where I always say in my videos sometimes we have to realize just because you're not on the score sheet doesn't mean you suck. Like you could have still had a good game like McEwen's been doing. I feel like Cam against Florida, he had a couple chances, a couple shots. They were just stopped. And in other games, he's been the same way since he's been in kind of this goal drought. So, like, he's just one of those guys that's kind of getting caught by the bad luck right now of either a hot goaltender or just hitting the post or whatever. I feel like he'll get going again. But TK's not being aggressive enough. He's focusing too much, I think, this year on being other side of his
game. 50-50. I would say he's had some games where he's done it very well. He had even the game where we lost the other night where he did it really well. I forget which game it was. Maybe it was the Tampa game.
Probably Tampa, yeah.
Like I actually think we played worse against Florida than we did against Tampa. Because I think Tampa didn't even play well in that game, and they beat us 4-0.
No, they didn't. They played bad in the first period, and we just didn't take advantage of it.
They had a completely mediocre game, and we had zero offensive impact. Mm-hmm. This is where I'm like, you got outcoached.
Yeah, well, no, my thing with TK more is he's been aggressive in other facets of the game, but like I said, his shot, if he uses it, we've seen it before. He has one of the better wristers when he just fires it and doesn't overthink it.
But then drives to the net afterwards too.
And
Credit to Charlie O'Connor who brought this up on Broadsheet Hockey's podcast. So I do want to give him credit for saying this is a good observation. TK had a goal earlier this year where he kind of fired on net and then followed up his own rebound and then just buried his own rebound. It's like, we're not, and that's where Scott Hartnell has a great point. We're not going to those difficult areas. Like, where are the shots in the slot? Like, where are they? Where, like, you were bringing up Braden Shen. Where is this shot that is literally probably the highest percentage scoring area on the power play? Just doesn't exist anymore for this team. Yeah. It's like shots.
Maybe the Blues can just start sucking, and then we'll be like, "Excuse me."
Or maybe we can use the big 6'3" power forward that we have, who has a good shot to do it, or Couturier, or TK, or Farabee, or Atkinson, or somebody. Like,
you have guys to do it.
Frustrated at this point.
And Brass also, like, the other thing is Brassard, with how well he was playing before injury. Yeah, but how well he was playing points wise before injury. You could argue Derek Brassard was one of our top 3 forwards on the season thus far.
And coming in $1 million a year.
Yes, and coming into the season, I did not expect to be going at November 26th. That Derek Brassard before injury was probably our third best. Where that means you're having offense problems when Brass, who's been a good player and more of an offensive player, obviously the defense, you've never been that great at defense.
It's really just the
veterans. But is your third best forward. Yeah.
The veterans are the ones who are, and again, this is why are being the most consistent. Like the guys who are in their mid-20s, they're the ones who are struggling right now. Like even, I wouldn't say Lawton's not struggling.
No, I wouldn't say.
But you see what I mean? Like anybody who's like 27 and up, they seem to be okay. The guys who are like in their mid-20s or only a few years in, they're the ones who are struggling, which again, like I can't help but blame coaching. Like I really can't help but blame coaching because your job is to get the most out of everyone.
Yeah. Now the young guys though,
zero maintenance.
Yeah. If we saw it, the young guys did play better, which I did get done saying I don't think he's a good structural coach, but he's good with developing the youngsters. They did play better when Lappy was on the coaching staff. Well, now that he's down with the Phantoms,
I think he is. I think he is
as much of an output from the young players.
I think you're spot on. I think that is, and that's why they hired the coaches that they did. I believe with what's his name? Green. Was it not Travis? What's the other assistant coach's name outside of Jason? The Gator. They have Gator and
I always forget his name too.
Oh man, I forget it. He played for the Phantoms as well. Anyway, but
I'll grab it. Yeah, I'll get it.
But they brought those guys in because I think they always kind of knew, like, hey, we want Lappy in the system. Let's give him an opportunity. Probably always wanted to be a head coach. He definitely understands the mind. Like that's the one thing that I believe about Lappy. The guy, competitor, he understands how to push buttons to that level. But like you said, structurally, maybe he's not the best coach. I think that is actually okay with me. Like, I don't need the
Jason Smith or Riley Armstrong.
Jason Smith, Riley Armstrong. That's
Riley Armstrong.
I don't know why I was thinking Travis Green, who coaches the Vancouver Canucks.
Canucks, yeah. For now, at least.
Yeah. And well, there's a case there too. Like, I know people, and again, I'm not shitting on Travis Green. I don't know the situation that well. But when you look at your team and Elias Pettersson stops doing well, it's like, what are you going to do? Trade Elias Pettersson? No, you get rid of the coach. Sorry, coaches. Like, that's just your job. It's your job is to get the most out of the assets that you have. And I look at a guy, and I'm just throwing a name out there. I don't know if he's actually going to come here at this point. I don't even know if anybody's getting fired because I don't know how AV survived last season. After those games against New York in the past under Snyder, you lose your job. Like, under Paul Holmgren, you're done. You get embarrassed like that all in a row, you're not here anymore. So Fletcher's being.
Well, that's what happens when you have a major corporation running a team. They don't have as much eyes on it at 24/7 basis.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. But like a guy like Bruce Boudreau, okay, who has his own downsides. He's a guy who's never had playoff success, which is why he's not coaching right now. But when he comes into a team, it's like repeated factor every time. Your offense just starts ramping up to 100. You start scoring goals immediately, and you are immediately one of the highest producing point teams in the league, and you win. Now, when the stakes get higher, he gets out coached for whatever reason. I'm not saying he's a perfect coach, but you can see trends with the ways guys coach. And like you said, there is a trend to the way AV coaches. And I think publicly AV has been great. Like, he's not calling out players. He's not saying, oh, they suck. That stuff I don't have a problem with. That's the thing. I'm not going to call AV a bad coach, and I'm not going to say he's an idiot. It's just not true. It's just not true. He's not a bad coach. But I wonder, like, is he the right coach for this team? That's what I wonder.
Yeah, and AV's shelf life, if you look at a lot of his teams, it's been longer for some of them than others, but normally he has a period where he starts hitting this
most coaches.
Twilight. But with AV, it's always kind of the same, like, the defense starts playing well and you're doing well goaltending-wise defensively, but then your offense is stagnant. And then that's kind of what gets them fired. Like, if you look at the Rangers, you look at the Canucks, at the end it was kind of, they were playing an okay all-around game, but they're very stagnant now, being able to consistently score goals, and we don't need that with the people we have. And that's kind of what I meant. Like, that's kind of been what's consistently got him axed, which right now we're at that period, and if he doesn't get out of it by, I would say, after Christmas, you're going to really start at that point saying, well, now it really is time to potentially think of doing something else here. Yeah, because you need to get the offense. As much as I like the way the defense is playing better and how great the goaltending
Mike Yo Mike Yo as an assistant. The reality is
well, Yo's probably the interim if you wait because if you don't hire, if you don't have an immediate. If you don't have an immediate.
I agree with you, but I think it's a mistake because you're going to fire him anyway.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If you're going to replace AV, you got to bring in a guy who's really going to be the head coach of this team. And that's why I was thinking a guy like Bruce Boudreau, maybe with a guy like Yo, who's better defensively, bring in a guy like Tocchet, who definitely understands the playoffs and the mentality of the playoffs. If you can bring in that kind of attitude.
That's the other guy I was thinking because I always liked Rick Tocchet in there. He pulled the most out of. Yeah. Yeah. And he pulled the most out of that team.
Exactly. Are you talking about was it Coyotes, right?
Yeah, the Coyotes who are not the most talented overall roster, obviously. So
when the Flyers were going out to get a coach, I wanted the Flyers to get Dave Tippett, who is now the coach of the Edmonton Oilers. Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at coaches who literally, and again, Barry Trotz is one of these guys, and they're struggling this year, but it's kind of the first time he's ever struggled.
And they had so much injuries and COVID issues.
Exactly. So, it's like I look at coaches who doesn't matter what you give them, they will get the most out of them. Not, I need the perfect lineup. I need more veterans. Then you never even hear that come out of their mouth. They're like, I have what I have, and I will turn this crop of players like Dave Tippett, also Arizona Coyotes. That team was always in the playoffs, and they were never good enough to be in the playoffs. That's what because we have the talent. We need a coach who can squeeze every drop of energy out of them, and that they come every night believing they can win the games.
Yeah. Now, Dave Tippett, I do think I wouldn't mind him just being an overall hockey fan. I do think Flyers fans would hate him, though, due to the simple fact of his lineup.
They would hate Tortorella.
Oh, they would. But I'm talking about Tippett would be because of his lineup moves, just like AV at times, because Tippett is one of those coaches, Pirlo and I talked about it a bit, that kind of wants to challenge you by making it the most difficult for his players at some time.
Yeah.
Putting Bouchard with freaking William Lagesson, who are both not quick defensemen, that are good shot blocking and physical defensemen, that Bouchard himself can push the pace a little bit. Lagesson is literally just the prior two things, where you're like, oh, let's put these two guys together. Like Lagesson's basically Nick Grossman. Like, he doesn't skate much at all. He's just good at shot block and hit people. And you're putting him with a very solid young defenseman but that's not the quickest that you're trying to develop in Evan Bouchard. Like, that's literally just saying, let's see what the hell you guys can do with this situation where that's why I feel like it would be challenging for him here because he's getting trashed. Whenever I look at Edmonton's Reddit and Edmonton's threads, he always gets trashed for putting Torres too high in the lineup, for doing all these other different things, not for putting Benson in or one of the youngsters, and then when he puts Benson in, he looks like an idiot penalties wise, and then he benches him again. So there's different things.
He's definitely a more old school coach.
Yeah, that's 100%. The right way to put it. I think he's 100%.
So is AV.
Where AV is that, but Tippett's it in the really old school way of I'm gonna keep the lineup or put the lineup like this, and you're just gonna have to figure it out basically. But the thing you like from Tippett is he always gets the most, like you were saying, out of the lower end of the roster. Yes. Chris Russell should not be one of Edmonton's best damn defensemen at this point of his career. But Chris Russell, in terms of defense and overall game this year, is the second best defenseman.
Let's give AV some credit then, though, right? Because a guy like Justin Braun has played really well. A guy like Scott Lawton has played really well. This is.
Oh no, yeah, that's true,
and that's where I am frustrated. But I'm never going to say that AV is a bad coach. You're not going to hear me be like, oh yeah, he sucks. He's just not a good coach. That's why I was like, you need to find the right coach for the right team.
That's why I was making the point more of
without Kevin Hayes.
You're getting it out of the young guys, or not the young guys, the
veterans.
Yeah, the lower guys in the lineup, where you want to also get it out of the higher guys, which that's the balancing act where some people get on
either though.
Oh, exactly.
McEwen doesn't have a goal. Lindblom doesn't have a goal. When's the last time Scott Lawton scored? Nate Thompson.
I thought McEwen didn't score that one deflection goal.
You're right. You're right. He had that one deflection. He had his first goal. Yeah. Was that Calgary?
I think so. Yeah, I thought he had the deflection on.
I am a huge McEwen fan. Let's make that clear.
They also don't put him in spots to get goals, so that's the other side of that.
Well, they're given the opportunity now in the third line. Though I would argue, why not shift Farabee to the right side, move up Lindblom and JVR? Like, why even force McEwen to, like, I don't know. No, I'm okay with it because McEwen's earned it. So, like, the McEwen thing doesn't confuse me like the Willman thing, because I'm like, Willman hasn't necessarily excelled at the fourth line. So why are you elevating him? Where a guy like Frost is a different story, and even there you can be like, well, why isn't he third line center? We know why right now because it's injuries. But, you do look at Frost and you're like, well, his ceiling is I'm seeing people say like, oh, maybe he's just a bottom six guy in the NHL. I'm like, I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. Literally, I've heard people say this, and I'm not going to name any names, and people that a lot of people listen to, because like they're like, oh, he's 22. Maybe he's just. I'm like, dude, he's 22. Like, enough. He's 22 years old. He's got a ridiculous skill set.
Well, you guys had Craig. That was your guys that had Craig Eagles on the one time. Yeah, when he talked about how. Yeah, he talked about how certain guys, especially when they go through injuries and stuff, you got to be patient with them, and you have to. Other guys have different, like, basically tracks to getting to where they have to be, where your prime years are more in between 24 to 26, where the people like Pirlo and I disagree on this a lot, where like I got into an argument with him over the Stromes and like all three of them the other day, because like if you don't make it by 24 to 26, then yeah, if you're at 26 and still not cutting it, then yeah, you might want to start saying at that point you might not be consistent in the NHL. But we've seen guys even make it after that, like Nordy, as a former first round pick, actually was able to get going with the Predators a couple of years ago.
That's what's going to happen.
And then Ryan Strome didn't get going big time until about 26. So,
dude, it happens. Mike Knuble.
Yeah, Knuble was a very good late bloomer. Yeah, so there's a bunch of guys that really don't get going consistently until later in those careers, and that's why I think you have to be patient. But I feel like the Flyers, when it comes to their team, if Nate Thompson, kind of like you said, is more of a 13th forward, if he keeps playing slow and just can't keep up with the pace, you have to kind of pick at that point. Now, there's not many people that are doing consistently successful to do it that are more centers in the minors, but you might have to pluck somebody that can just move a little bit quicker, that can play a fourth line game in the minors and try to let them play fourth line.
I thought that German, well, obviously Tanner Lazinski would have been that guy this year.
Yeah, if he was healthy.
We know that. He probably would be in the lineup right now. He was already.
Cage, you could do Cage. He's a defensive player that could play.
He is. I think that it probably would have been German Rubtsov, assuming that injuries, but I don't know if you know any updates about him, but I know he got injured, and I have not heard of him coming back.
I remember Bob tweeted.
He was playing well.
Yeah, he was. Like, he wasn't getting like the point production that
nobody is.
Nobody is. But like, he was playing a more aggressive. He went overseas to the K and started coming back and played. You could tell it was like he went over there, kind of fixed his. And then he kind of also adjusted and fixed his game, kind of like you saw Scott Lawton do when he got sent down, when we kind of told him to develop and what we wanted him to adjust to. And it seemed like Ruby did the same thing, but I remember, I feel like Bob tweeted that there wasn't any, a couple of days ago, really
any updates on
him where it's more.
And we lost.
Rubtsov was injured in Friday's game and did not play Saturday. So right now, it could be like a day-to-day type thing. So maybe he'll play this evening. So that'll be a judge of it. So if he's back and there's only day-to-day, I would agree with you. He's probably the guy you want to call that just is a quicker skater, plays a good 200-foot game. But if he's not healthy, the secondary guy. Yeah, the second guy you could do is probably Cates, because he's already had a cup of coffee in the NHL.
I would agree. It's a shame, man. The injuries are really piling up for this organization, and it was a strength in the beginning of the year. And then you still look at the NHL. Like, we lost Nicolas Aube-Kubel, and those who are not aware, he has 2 goals in 4 games. I'm sure that'll piss people off
with Colorado.
Of course, and that's kind of my point. Is like, you can't jump on these guys and be like, oh, they're talentless, they suck, and then be shocked that they do well in other places. Most of these guys do not suck, and most of them are not talentless.
Yeah, when he got claimed, I said that. I said I wish him success, and probably he will have success in Colorado because look at who he's on a line with. Look at who he's playing with.
Let me ask you this, which really frustrated me when I realized it today. I'm like, why didn't we waive Nate Thompson? Nobody would have grabbed him.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think people would have
taken him.
Thompson, where you couldn't have waived. Like people were always talking about Brown, where I was like, yeah, people would take Patrick Brown because he has $750 for next year.
Yes,
yeah, he has the very good contract for being a consistent.
But nobody would. The odds that somebody would take a 37-year-old hockey player,
slowing down player too. That's not as quick.
It's unlikely.
He's more of a face-off guy at this point.
It's unlikely.
Yeah, that is highly unlikely.
Obviously, was going to get taken in waivers. Which
by somebody.
Maybe the team gave up on him, kind of, but it seems strange to protect him and then to give up on him. Protect him in expansion.
Especially when it's not like he played very well. Like he was very good in Navy's first season.
Yeah.
Very average last year, and then not good to start this season. Where it's not like he had that great season last year to go, oh, we definitely want to protect him, and then you did, and then you waived a guy that you knew had a high percentage chance of getting plucked on waivers. So
let me ask you this, and let's go a little bit backwards here. Derek Brassard's probably not going to be out long term. If he was questionable to even come back for the last game, it's probably not a long-term injury. Maybe it's a couple more games. From what I saw from Frost, and I would stand by this, I don't think Frost is going back to the AHL unless there's some collapse in his game. He's already proven he's a point per game pace. He's doing much better than the rest of his team. It's not like they're all producing. And that's why his numbers are high. His numbers are high because he's the best player down there, right?
Yeah.
He's NHL ready. He's playing better. He did exactly what they asked. We needed him to get back after missing a long period of time. Brassard will probably come back. Hayes, we don't know at this point when he's coming back, but he probably will be back. Okay, so let's ignore that one for a little bit. Where do you see Brassard fitting in, assuming Frost does well in the position that he's in the second line? Does he come in and play third line winger again, which is a head scratcher to me, or do you shift Lawton down to play fourth line center, put Brassard as third line center, and then you because I think that would actually create a more difficult team to play against. Putting Lawton on that fourth line, he's too good to be on there. But you put him on there, he's going to start scoring goals. Like he's going to dominate the opposition.
Yeah, I think the latter would be more what I would do because you want to keep Joel if that line with Farabee and Frost and obviously Cam is doing well together and people are positioned correctly and not the opposite of what they should be doing here for the time. And then you have Brassard centered with either Van Riemsdyk, McEwen, or Van Riemsdyk and Lindblom or something like that. If you move Scotty down, that gives you a very good fourth line in general because you have Scott Lawton, who's a very good defensive player. Right. You have, for right now, you have Connor Bunneman.
Brown will be back eventually, too.
Yeah, Brown. You can also put Patrick Brown either at center and then let whatever one you want to let play the wings just both do both.
He's
at
a
that
righty.
Point.
You can put him on the right
you
side
can
too.
do that. Yeah, so you would have a much better consistent in terms of being able to kind of get chances by your fourth line and not just be a good within the game fourth line like our team has been this season that does all the things you want. You would be a team that generates a little bit more offense from your fourth line if you have like Patrick Brown, Lawton, and either McEwen or somebody like Oscar down there.
If Oscar was playing the fourth line with Lawton as his center, that would be much better for me than Nate Thompson. Now, again, I hate picking on Nate Thompson because I feel like people consistently, I keep seeing he's like the worst player in the NHL. He is definitely not. He is not an effective offensive player. That is without a doubt. But to do the role that he does, to block the shots, to win the faceoffs, to muck and grind in a game, he is good at that. He is good at it, and he can do it well. But at the end of the day, if your issue is scoring goals, you know what I mean? It's like, got to start getting more creative. Maybe there's a chance that Frost might play third line, though. Like, do you think there's any chance that Brassard walks back in, sits in between Farabee and Atkinson? They try to go back to that line because it looks like they're reverting back to what worked in the beginning of the year, right? And then, do you try Frost with JVR and McEwen? Or I think they end up mixing it up completely at that point.
I mean, that could work because Frost has played with some guys, obviously, in the minors. at different times, whether it's on the power play or whatever, like the Ratcliffe-sized people of the world. So he has experience playing with bigger guys around him. So that could work too. I just feel like it depends how that line goes, because if the line's churning with Frost, Fairby, and Atkinson, and Frost is playing good like he did last game, I thought, and I think it was about 13 minutes he played a pretty good game. If he keeps doing that, I wouldn't touch. It's kind of like if it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing. Of course, yeah. And then I would just move Lotz down and then let Brass play on the third line, because Brass isn't really a fourth line center. Like, he's more of either you put him on the second line.
That's what I was thinking too.
Or you put him on the third line, because he's not good defensively. And you don't want your usually you want your fourth line center to be good defensively.
But I agree. He's not in
his career, he hasn't been good defensively by the numbers where you don't put those guys in your fourth line. Usually.
Yeah, but he's not a muck and grind guy. Like, he's not a guy who's going to block shots and get in front of everything and dig in the corners. Like, he's a guy who's going to look for a breakout pass. He's a guy who, he might make a nice read, grab a puck,
cut off a lane.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the stuff he's going to do. And you want to have him play with guys who can produce offensively. If Frost makes this team, which I believe he's about to, I think that's what's happening in front of our face. I do think it makes this team a lot more dangerous offensively. You combine that, you get Ellis back eventually, you get Hayes back. There is still opportunity for this season to end on a high note, to make a wild card spot, to get in, get hot, get past the first round. As I said, on paper, people are not going to convince me this team doesn't have talent. It's just not going to happen.
Oh yeah, that's not going to happen for me.
It's not going to happen. I'm very frustrated, like everybody else, but I can't help but be like, okay, coaches, if you can't get more out of this, and I'm outsmarting you, then I'm annoyed. And let me give you an example. This is not me trying to say I'm smarter than the coaches, but like, for instance, in that I'll bring up the Max Willman example again. I literally was talking to my roommate about it. I was pissed that Willman was doing that. Not because I don't want to see Willman succeed, but because I'm like, the coaches don't know what they're doing, and it's obvious to me. I was like, one, Carter Hart shouldn't have played the game against Tampa Bay. He should have played the game against Florida. And I know it's not a big deal there, but I was like, okay, Morgan Frost is already supposed to be here, right? What did they end up doing? They end up bombing. They wasted Carter Hart's performance on a night that they didn't show up anyway, right? Broussard got injured. They needed Frost immediately in that game.
Yeah.
They took Willman off of the third line and put him on the fourth line and moved up Lindblom about halfway through the game. So they didn't stick with that either. They moved up McEwen when I was like, why didn't you move up McEwen? Why'd you move up Willman? Like, everything that I called out as a question mark, they ended up going to that a game later, which, again, it doesn't mean I'm smarter than them, but I'm going, what are you guys thinking? You're supposed to be ahead of it. Like, what I saw all of those moves very clearly as stuff that needed to be made. You had a tougher opponent the next night against Florida, and Jones played well, so I'm not ripping on him, but Hart is your best goalie against a team that literally has scored 4 goals, and give the Flyers credit for that. They didn't give up a ton of goals against Florida, right? But like a night, like, and maybe Broussard wouldn't have got injured if Frost was in that lineup. Like, things would have happened differently. I just feel like they got punished in that game because they didn't prepare for the game properly. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's how I felt about it. I was like, you literally made every decision that I wouldn't have made, and you lost a player in the process. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does, because you go into game planning for games to be able to have the best chances to seed against the team you're going up against, or with the roster structure you have. We talked about it in this video through different times, where the Flyers haven't been putting guys in the best spots to succeed. Whereas the same thing, if we want to use a cross-sport example here in Philadelphia, with the Eagles, that they currently are doing better with putting guys in spots to succeed, because they decided that running the football is actually a part of the NFL. Where early in the season, they thought that it wasn't.
Throwing from the shot.
Yes. So where they adjusted, and now when you listen to people around town, they think Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts are the best thing since basically Donovan McNabb and Andy Reid. So, like, that's how quick things can change. So, obviously, I completely agree with everything you said in the video, but like Jason was kind of saying, you don't know if things change, the thing I brought up at the beginning, but things change very quickly in hockey. Like, look how bad the Blues sucked the entire first half of the season. And then they, in January, just go on an absolute tear and are the best team in the league to end the season.
Can we get Will Smith getting jiggy with it to play in the Flyers locker room and inspire them or something?
Yeah, you need. So I mean, I think obviously, I feel like we replaced Willman. Like I kind of was saying that earlier with a guy like Bunny too, because he plays the grit and grind game where we haven't done that enough this year, unless if your name is Zach McEwen. So you want to have another guy in the lineup to kind of show people like, see that's what we want you to be doing, and not just Zach McEwen. So like that's kind of why you need to see that more. Where a guy that who's been producing fine, I think he has 13 points. He's doing okay points wise, but when it comes to 13 points Cooch has. I don't think Cooch has played as clean in general this year as you've seen him play in past years. Now part of that has to do with the dude's playing overtaxed because of injuries, and he's playing in every facet of everything, but he hasn't been in, even saying that, he hasn't been as clean in defensive zones as much as he has in past years when he's won the damn Selke. We know how good Sean Couturier is. He hasn't been Selke worthy this year. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. No, he hasn't. I think he's had some spurts where he's looked really good, but he has not looked as good as he looked last year. But outside of G, I mean, you can really say that about every single guy. And that's where I get it. That's where, again, I go.
Minus McEwen, it's literally G. Where the forward court's G and Zach.
But I think McEwen in general is like he's just moving his feet and just hitting. It's not like he's coming in and lighting things up either. Like they're not producing as a team. Like they're just not producing. None of the defensemen are producing. We have how many offensive defensemen, and none of them are producing.
Justin Braun's our best point producing defenseman, and he hasn't even been in offense. San Jose, like I was joking with I think it was Pirlo the other day. I was like, San Jose Shark fans are probably like, where the hell did this come from? Because in his entire career, he's just been a outlet pass guy and a guy that plays very good defense for the Sharks. They're probably like, where did this 8 points this early in the season come from? Like
luck. But he was playing really well. I agree. But it's not sustainable. Like Justin Braun's going to finish the season with 25 points. He's not going to finish.
Which is really good for him, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't have anything against that. But like Travis Sanheim is an offensive defenseman. Rasmus Ristolainen, has put up offensive points playing for worse teams. Ivan Provorov has scored 17 goals as a defenseman. Most of them were at 5.
Well, Risto, I think, is coaching, because here's a question I have for you. I feel like Risto this year, they're kind of making him try to do, because he's always been more of, compared to some people would wrongly compare him to like how Tyler Myers doesn't always
use
the skills he has to the best of his abilities. Now, he uses his body unlike Tyler Myers, but it's more in the facet of he has more skill than you see him consistently use. And that's the same thing people would say about Myers in his career in terms of what they would also say about Risto, where this year I've seen him commit the most he's ever had to the defensive end combined with his
I think that's what they've asked of him.
The puck, which is why I feel like, that's what my question was going to be. Don't you think that probably factors into him having less of an offensive output because they're kind of telling him to adjust his game and learn to become a new player, basically?
Absolutely, but I think it is a consequence. I think it's all a trickle-down effect, the fact that nobody is producing right now. Like, no one is producing.
But you can also put him on the power play. If Sanheim's not, like, he's not been consistently on the power play because you put Sanheim in and then you put an extra forward in instead of a defenseman.
What is consistent about the power play?
So, no, exactly. But, like, you're not going to get consistent unless if you actually keep, like, that's the thing. Eventually, you got to try to keep something to try to get it going where you can't just keep rotating and thinking it's eventually going to work, because then nobody's building the power play chemistry with each other of knowing where they go.
I feel like I have a more solid game plan for the power play than our coach does.
I think most of the city of Philadelphia of late.
No, like if you put me in there and be like, you're even fixing power play, I'd be like, all right, like I literally roll my sleeves up. I know who I want on there. I know what positions I want them in. I know what I want them to do when. I know what I would ask of them to do.
Oh, Ranta was confirmed for today, by the way. Oh,
What
go
you say?
ahead. Antti Ranta was confirmed for today. I just
Oh,
saw that.
okay.
But yeah.
Well, good. That's good. Dude, I mean, Flyers could use all the help they can get. And I do want to go back to your first point, and we're getting close to wrapping up here, but I'll give you a chance for a Phantoms and Reading update here at the end. I do want to go back to the first point. The Flyers' schedule has been a nightmare this year. Like, yeah, they lost games of late. They've also beaten some of the best teams in the league. They've also lost to some of the best teams in the league, and they're playing essentially great teams every night. That is absolutely draining and is something that will slow down the production of your team. You do not have those teams where you get to pile up points against. You're not playing any teams that are weak defensively. It's not happening. That is part of the problem as well. But I still see this as an issue for sure. So give me a Phantoms update real quick, and then give me a Reading Royals update as well, because you've been covering the team also.
Yeah, well, the Phantoms, they did add a couple veterans recently.
Gillies, right?
Yeah, of course they added John Gillies, and then they also added a Lappin, who's a veteran winger, to tryouts there as well. Nick Lappin, and then that's because of also injuries, and combined with the fact that Frost and then Willman has been called up, and then now you also have Bunny called up from the Phantoms.
Forster's out.
That changes everything. Forster's been officially ruled out. And then also when it comes to them, they also added Wes McCone, I think is how you say his name, signed to a professional tryout as well. And then obviously Ryan McKinnon returned to the Phantoms from a brief loan to Reading. He's been up and down, but hasn't even played a game with Reading. He's played all of his games with the Phantoms. Their best players, let's put it this way, their best player is Morgan Frost, who's now probably going to stay up with the Flyers like we talked about.
Not coming back.
And then Max Willman, who was up, is their second best player. So in terms of offensively there, so they didn't have both of them. So it's been tough for them. But their team this season is kind of, like I said earlier, they have the guys similar to last year. Like, you replaced Pouliot, you kind of swapped out with Adam Glendening, because both are play pusher AHL defensemen. But I think Derek Pouliot, honestly, would have been better to keep with how he was playing here. But that's just my opinion. That don't matter. But anyway, they just haven't been playing a good structural game either, where it's kind of Lappy's doing good with the young guys. You see German playing well. You've seen good moments from Ratcliffe, who, again, if he stays healthy, I think will still be.
I would like to see him get a call up.
He could also be a guy that could fit into your fourth line, just to be playing that great along, again, board style, checking, blocking shots. He does that really well in the minor leagues, and that's all you need from your fourth liner. But they just had key injuries. You have Zade Wisdom's been out since the beginning of the season. Mm-hmm. Wade probably would have started with the Flyers if he was healthy. But Mason Millman, who was a very good young defenseman last year as a rookie, hasn't been healthy. Too? Yeah, he hasn't been healthy this entire season.
That explains why I haven't seen him in the lineup. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other side is you just haven't had, with the Flyers, as much scoring from guys like Shushko, who's been very good in his rookie season. I thought he's played well of late, but hasn't been putting out the output. Guys like, obviously, Hodgson, you don't expect, who hasn't been in the AHL for a while, to necessarily be a guy that in his games, when he's played 3 games, actually has looked really solid in terms of in the offensive zone compared to other guys like Shushko and Wilson and guys you can expect to be consistent play drivers. So it's you got to get a little bit more out of the veterans. The young guys are playing well. Garrett Wilson's been playing really well the last couple games. So if they keep pushing how they're playing better of late, then maybe they can start turning it around. It's kind of the same with the Flyers.
Yeah, the majority of their clunkers were in the beginning of the year, from what I remember.
Yeah, it's more they're competitive now, where it's just getting to playing the structured system that Lappy wants to get them to,
right,
is what's going to get them over the top, because they're still playing kind of like the Flyers and not putting guys necessarily consistently in the best spots. Where to wrap up the show, like you said, Reading is kind of doing the opposite. I think Kirk McDonald, out of all of our coaches, is doing the best at putting guys in the best spot to do the best thing, where Jacob Pritchard, Braden Lowe, and DeChara, who's a fan favorite in Reading, were able to play great as a line together after guys like Winquist went down, where Pritchard has had a point in every game since the 31st of October. When he didn't get a point against Maine, which was one of the games that they got spanked in, which has only been a couple of games this year that Reddings actually got spanked in. Otherwise, they've been really good. Like, he's been on a point streak. He's a point per game, 13 guy. He has a chance to be maybe the next. He's much younger because he's a rookie this year, but be a guy like Willman that people doubt in terms ECHL, AHL, and then see what happens from there. Because he's only a rookie that played in Boston with some good guys. Like, I'm pretty sure McCarr even. So, like, he's played with some good guys up there. So he has the experience, and he's doing really good now in his first season. And then Braden Lowe, who's been on the team for a couple years, he's continuing to have great success as well. So for the Royals, they've honestly been the best team structurally-wise. It's just the only thing that continues for them is their power play hasn't been the best, like, in the entire organization. But they have good guys like Lowe. Bykoff is a guy who I wouldn't be surprised if the Phantoms give a shot to, particularly if people keep having injuries. I was kind of surprised they signed a forward and didn't just decide to give him a chance in the AHL with the way he's a sniper and can really pick his spots well. Already has 6 goals on the season. He's one of those guys that really can help add to your offense, which of course is what the Phantoms need. So that's something there. But Redding's a team that we've seen them get through injuries this far to, where Winquist is one of the best, if not the best, ECHL centers. So you don't have him for the last couple games, and you've still been competing well. You've still been playing well, minus this 12 Riviere game that they lost 5-1. And then they're going to come back and get a chance to beat them today. So it's good to play the same opponent back-to-back when you want to try to get revenge on them. So we'll see what happens tonight. I don't see them having 2 straight goose eggs because we haven't seen that at all from this team.
What's the Reading Royals record right now? Because I haven't looked it up at all.
Their record currently on the season, from the last I checked, I'm trying to remember since I was obviously out when I didn't get to watch the game the other day, but we're ninth we moved down after that loss to ninth in the overall league, which is still pretty good to be top 10 at 6-3-3. So okay. Reading's also been benefited, and also 6-3-3-1 because they count the shootout losses. They put that extra column instead of having overtime and shootout together like the NHL does it. Yeah. So they've been benefiting by being able to push into overtime, but that's also, we've seen the Flyers do that in the past. It doesn't matter how you get the points to get to the postseason. It just matters that you got the points to get to the postseason. So then once you get there, anything can happen. So I think they've been the best team and the most impressive out of the organization in terms of consistency early on. They played 13 games. So our double-A team's been the best in terms of consistency. The Phantoms have done good at developing some of the guys that I would want to see called up, like Ratcliffe. We talked about Rupsoff. If you need somebody for the fourth line, even Jackson plays that great overall game. Where Cates, I never expected even in the AHL level a lot of offense from, just from the game he plays. He plays a very good structural game. And that you usually don't get offense with those. You get more of a PK, a future PK.
Reminds me like a Cole Bardreau with more.
Yeah. Or just like one of those Matt Coleman run-of-the-mill centers that, like, you're never going to say, oh, my God, this dude is amazing. But you'll be like, this guy can fit in with my third line pretty well and just play like Cody Eakin did when he was actually good and not now when he struggled every 5 seconds. But like somebody like that, or how before he completely took off and was more of a third-line center in Washington, a guy like Stevenson played at, where now Chandler Stevenson looks like one of the best underrated centers in all of damn hockey since he's gone to Vegas. But beforehand, he wasn't that. He was more of just that good third line center that played a good overall game, where now he is on a different stratosphere than that.
Well, let's hope that happens with somebody else internally.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, thank you so much for coming on, man. Thank you for the updates. Appreciate your knowledge and sharing it with everybody on the podcast. Anything you're working on that you want to tell people about? Let them know.
Obviously, I'm going to keep doing different articles for our site coming out on our Flyers Nitty. I have a couple that are going to come. I'm going to do them for the Royals on David Drake, who's our former 7th round pick.
I remember David Drake.
Years back. And he's
6'8" now? 6'8" or 6'6"? Big boy.
Yeah, he's a big. I can't remember if it's 6'8" or 6', but he's a big dude, and he's one of those guys that doesn't always. He got the star of the game. Kirk was happy about it because he's one of those guys that doesn't always get the recognition since he doesn't get points, but he's one of those guys that just plays a great defensive game and a great just steady Eddie defensive like anchor game on your defense. And you need those guys on your defense as much as you need the point producers, because the perfect blend of that is what makes the most successful teams. You can't just have all offensive defensemen, because we've seen that with teams at every level, and that usually fails because then you're having guys out of position all the time. Yeah.
Yep. All right.
But that's pretty much it. And then my Sports Fanatic News YouTube page that I do stuff on. Plus, obviously, I'll be covering the Reading Royals once they come back home on the 11th, and then the Phantoms, I'll be there on the 1st for us. So
okay, awesome. Yeah, guys, make sure you follow Joe. What's your Twitter handle?
JJ Borek 26 BOREK.
Cool. Yeah, make sure to follow Joe online. Obviously, I'll have you back on for another update later in the year. And thanks again, man. Appreciate you doing this. Appreciate you coming on, and it's always fun. You always know.
Yeah, it's always fun talking about the entire organization. I love how we can talk about the entire thing too on this podcast.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, on some we do just focus on the big club, so it's fun to do that as well.
Yeah, dude, I like to get nerdy with it. That's for sure. Let's get deep. All right, thank you everybody for listening. Please like, subscribe, comment. I forgot to thank the sponsor. Thank you, Jim Steaks, for just being our sponsor and making great cheesesteaks. Make sure to pick up a Jim Steaks probably after your Thanksgiving holiday. If that's what you're listening to this, we're recording this the day after. The Flyers play today at 3:30 in the afternoon. So this episode will probably air probably while they're playing. So good luck for those numbers. But thank you, everybody. Really appreciate the voices and the ears and the comments. I do read every comment, so don't hesitate commenting. I try to read every single one that comes in. Thank you again. Like, subscribe, share, and remember, always stay gritty.